Global slavery has a deep and troubling impact on China, which is affecting millions. The Global Slavery Index estimates that over 3.8 million people in China are the victims of modern slavery, including forced labor, debt bondage, and human trafficking. This issue is particularly severe in industries like manufacturing, textiles, and electronic sectors, which are heavily tied to global supply chains. International concerns has intensified over allegations of state-sponsored forced labor, especially involving Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. This has a serious consequences not only for the individuals involved but also for the China's reputation as a global manufacturing hub. Multinational companies like Nike, H&M and Apple have come under intense scrutiny for their supply chain connections to Chinese region, which is allegedly involved in forced labor. In turn, many of these companies have had to publicly distance themselves from suppliers in Xinjiang to maintain compliance with ethical sourcing standards and human rights obligations. As a result, China faces growing reputational risk and economic pressure. Foreign companies are being forced to reassess their sourcing practices, like China's image as a global manufacturing hub and under scrutiny. Ultimately, modern slavery not only violates human rights but also undermines trust in China's role in international trade.
The Xinjiang region of China, home to 11 million Uyghurs, is experiencing great human rights abuses. Uyghurs make up 45% of the region's population but face systematic repression through mass surveillance, land seizures, and forced labor programs disguised as poverty alleviation. At least 8,000 Uyghurs have been forcibly transferred to factories, often working under harsh conditions and constant surveillance. Entire supply chains are affected. Materials like copper, aluminum, and steel mined in Xinjiang are found in global automotive products, even in companies like BMW and major tire brands. A 2023 study confirmed many of these abuses, with factories built near detention camps, blending incarceration with economic exploitation. Globally, this raises reputational and legal risk for companies, especially under laws like the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which bans goods linking to Xinjiang. Beyond forced labor, human trafficking persists in the greater Mekong sub-region. In Vietnam alone, 70% of trafficked victims abroad are women and children. Many sold into forced marriages in China, through deceptive job offers or direct purchase from poor families. These abuses threaten not only human dignity, but also global businesses' integrity and ethical responsibility.
China has taken several steps to combat modern slavery, but its effectiveness is still in question. They have the National Action Plan, which is from 2021 to 2030. This focuses on prevention through education, cleaning up illegal markets, and even using artificial intelligence and big data to detect trafficking. Law enforcement targets not just traffickers, but buyers too. They also have the DNA databases that helps to find missing children. Victims from modern slavery receive rehabilitation, psychological support, and job training. And China cooperates with the UN, the Interpol, and neighborhood countries to stop cross-border trafficking. But are all these measures being effective? We have the case of Qin. This is a Chinese factory, a Chinese company, which in 2023 has labor cases from children, and this is illegal. So we are not very sure if all these measures are being effective. And also in 2022, they did a test and they found that children are working in Xinjiang, and this was illegal.
While China has officially endorsed all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, there remain a disconnect between policy commitments and on-the-ground realities, particularly in Sustainable Development Goal 5 and 16, which is against women and children. Systematic workplace discrimination is widespread, from wage shifts to hiring biases against women of childbearing age. Though the one-child policy ended, social and political pressure now shifts towards pronatalism with limited support for women's autonomy. Perhaps most alarming are the reports from Xinjiang. Ethnic minority women have subjected to sexual abuse and forced sterilization in re-education camps, actions condemned internationally as gross human rights violations, as a staggering 70 million left behind children are growing up without their parents due to rural and urban migration. This leads to emotional neglect and mental health issues. Child labor remains reality in underdeveloped regions. Digital abuse is an emerging threat. With high internet penetration and limited online safeguards, children are increasingly vulnerable in virtual exploitation. Civil society and human rights advocacy are under tight control. China highlights its achievements and improvements. For example, female literacy in urban areas is now 95%. Child mortality has dropped thanks to improved public health infrastructure. Well, China's human rights narrative is one of paradox, strong global ambitions, but weak internal accountability. To bridge this gap, global actors must push their stronger enforcement mechanisms, while local reforms should focus on transparency, inclusive policy, and community health advocacy.
Coming closer to home in Australia, the Modern Act Slavery 2018, effective since January 2019, targets modern slavery in large entities earning over 100 million in revenue annually. The goal is to raise awareness and to support entities in identifying and addressing modern slavery risks. A 2023 review by Professor John Macmillan praised the Act's transparency frameworks, which encourages ethical business practices. The review found that 64 respondents supported the Act, mostly for boosting awareness. However, it found also some issues like weak enforcement and unclear reporting rules. Macmillan made several recommendations for which the government would issue a response later on. The recommendations included lowering the revenue threshold to 50 million, which the government did not adopt, introducing penalties for non-compliance, which the government agreed in principle, and expanding mandatory reporting criteria, which is accepted by the government. By 2025, modern slavery statements registered shows over 12,500 mandatory statements has been submitted, cover more than 22,500 entities headquartered across 64 countries. Has it been effective? As suggested, we believe that the Act has successfully raised awareness. However, stronger enforcement and clear guidance are still needed for greater impact in combating modern slavery here in Australia.